Somewhere within a few kilometers of where you are sitting, there is ground that has been set aside. Nobody farms it, nobody builds on it. It is reserved for people who have stopped. You have never questioned this. It is one of the most expensive habits our species has, and it is so normal that it is invisible. Now look at every other animal on Earth. Biologists have described something like 1.5 million species. Not one of them digs. And here is the number that should stop you. At a site called Sungir in Russia, 2 children were laid in the ground about 34,000 years ago. With them went roughly 10,000 beads, carved from mammoth ivory. Archaeologists made replicas and timed the work. Around 45 minutes per bead. Do that arithmetic. That is something like 7,000 hours of labor, put into a hole, in a landscape where a bad week meant starvation. Nobody was ever going to see it again. So who dug the first grave, and what were they actually doing? Here is the root. What animals do instead, the oldest holes, the flower burial that fell apart, the children at Sungir, and the bill. Let's go. Start with the rest of the animal kingdom, because the comparison is not what people expect. Animals are not indifferent. That is a myth, and it is wrong. An elephant will stop at the bones of another elephant. Not any bones. Researchers laid out skulls, ivory, and ordinary objects. Elephants went to the elephant remains first. They touched them with the trunk and the feet. And they stayed. Chimpanzee mothers do something harder to watch. When an infant stops moving, the mother often keeps carrying it. Not for an hour, for days, sometimes for weeks, until it is a dry husk she still grooms. Magpies have been seen laying grass beside a fallen bird. Dolphins push a still calf to the surface for hours trying to make it breathe. So attention is everywhere in the animal world. Attachment is everywhere. Now look at what none of them do. Not one of them digs a hole, arranges a body inside it, puts an object beside it, and covers it over. The gap is not feeling. Every social mammal has the feeling. The gap is the hole in the ground. Now the oldest holes, and here we have to be honest about how thin the ground is. The problem is simple. A body in the earth looks a lot like a body that fell in a hole. So archaeologists work from a checklist. Was a pit actually cut with edges? Is the skeleton articulated, with the small bones of the hands and feet still in place? Is the body arranged rather than sprawled? Is there anything with it that did not get there by accident? Articulation is the strongest signal. Here is why. A body left on the surface comes apart. Scavengers scatter it and the small bones go first. If a skeleton is still assembled after 50,000 years, something covered it quickly. The oldest reasonable candidates are around 100,000 years old, at Skhul and Qafzeh in Israel. At Qafzeh, one young individual was found with the antlers of a deer laid across the chest, held in the arms. At Skhul, another had the lower jaw of a wild boar in the same position. Antlers do not walk into a pit. That is the whole argument, and it is a good one. But it is also very close to the edge of what the evidence can carry. Anyone who tells you the date is settled is selling something. And there is one more thing in those graves: color. Red ochre turns up again and again, not as a smear, as deliberate coverage, packed around and over the body. Ochre is iron oxide. You have to find a source, dig it, grind it, and sometimes heat it to shift the color toward red. At Blombos Cave in South Africa, there is a full ochre workshop. Abalone shells used as mixing containers. Around 100,000 years old. So the pigment industry and the first arguable graves are the same age. That is either a coincidence or it is the whole story. Now hold that beside the checklist. A pit is practical. A body arranged on its side could be practical. Grinding iron oxide for hours and packing it around a person is not practical in any sense at all. Now the Neanderthals, because Shanidar is not the only case, and it is not even the best one. At La Chapelle au Sein in France, in 1908, a body was found in a pit. The pit was cut into the floor of a small cave. The pit is rectangular. It is cut into hard marl. Later, re-excavation of the site supported the reading that it was dug on purpose. At La Ferrassie, also in France, There are 8 individuals in one rock shelter. 2 adults, 6 children and infants, in a single place. 8 in one shelter is not an accident of geology. Accidents do not sort themselves by family. And at Dederiyeh in Syria, an infant was found lying on its back, arms folded. A limestone slab set at the head. A small flint flake resting on the chest. A slab at the head, a flake on the chest, roughly 70,000 years ago. Now, before the famous one, a number that keeps the whole field honest. How many of these do we actually have? Almost none. Across all of Neanderthal Europe and the Near East, over a span of roughly 200,000 years, the candidate burials come to something like 40 individuals, spread across maybe 20 sites. 40 in 200,000 years. Now the Upper Paleolithic, our own species. Across Europe, over about 30,000 years, accepted burials number in the low hundreds. Sungir gives us 3. Ferrassie gives 8. Compare that to a single modern town, which will produce more burials in 1 decade. So one of 2 things is true. Either burial was rare and exceptional, reserved for a handful of people, or it was common and almost none of it survived. Both are probably partly right. Loose ground destroys everything. Caves preserve. That is why nearly every case in this video is in a cave. And it is a preservation bias, not a discovery about behavior. Keep that number in your head. 40. Every confident sentence anyone says about Neanderthal ritual rests on 40 bodies. Now the story everybody knows, and the reason I am telling it is that it fell apart. In the 1950s, Ralph Selecki excavated Shanidar cave in northern Iraq. He found the remains of 10 individuals. One of them, Shanidar 4, changed how the public thought about Neanderthals. Soil samples went off for pollen analysis. The results came back with clumps of pollen from at least 7 plant species: yarrow, cornflower, groundsel, hollyhock, several with known medicinal uses. The reading was irresistible. Somebody had gathered flowers and laid them on the body. 60,000 years ago, a Neanderthal had been mourned with a bouquet. That one find did more for the Neanderthal reputation than any skull ever has. It went into textbooks. It is still on museum walls. And then the ground gave it back. Because there is an animal in that region called the Persian jerd. It is a burrowing rodent. It stores seeds and flower heads in chambers underground. Those chambers turn up in the same deposits, in the same cave. The pollen clumps are exactly what a jerd hoard looks like, and whole clumps of pollen still attached are not how flowers scatter naturally. They are how a rodent carries them. Read that again because it is the most useful thing in this video. The most famous burial in prehistory may have been arranged by a gerbil. Now here is why that story is worth more broken than intact. Emma Pomeroy and a team went back to Shanidar in recent years. In the same part of the cave, they found another individual. They called her Shanidar Z. And this time the argument is not about pollen. It is about the ground itself. The body lies in a shallow channel in the sediment. The head is propped. The left arm is folded under it. The surrounding rock shows no sign of a roof collapse that could have arranged her that way. That is a much duller claim than a bouquet. It is also much harder to argue with. You were not designed to keep the ones who stopped. Read that again, because it is the center of this whole video. Nothing about your body requires this. A carcass is a hazard. Every instinct you inherited says move away from it. That is what the rest of the animal kingdom does. And it is the correct answer. Moving away is cheap. It costs nothing. Staying costs hours and calories and risk in a world where you had neither to spare, and we stayed anyway. That is the strange thing, and it needs explaining. Now the children at Sungir, because this is where the numbers get absurd, Sungir sits east of Moscow, and the site is around 34,000 years old. 3 individuals matter here: an adult man and 2 children laid head to head in a single grave. Start with the man. Roughly 3,000 ivory beads sewn onto his clothing, in rows, following the shape of a garment that is long since gone. Now the children. Between them, close to 10,000 beads. The beads are smaller on the children, which means, and sit with this, somebody made a special smaller size for them. And beside the children lay spears made from mammoth ivory. One of them is around 2.5 meters long. That detail is worth its own moment. Mammoth tusk is curved. To get a straight shaft that long, you have to straighten ivory, soften it, work it, hold it while it sets. We are still not entirely sure how they did it, so Randall White and others made replica beads with period tools and timed themselves. The figure that keeps coming back is around 45 minutes to an hour for a single bead. 10,000 beads. Even at the low end, that is thousands of hours. Now put that in context. These are people whose whole existence was a calorie problem, and they spent the equivalent of years of one person's working time on decoration that went straight into the ground. Eric Trinkhaus and colleagues have studied these skeletons for decades, and the children turn out to be more interesting still. They had conditions visible in the bone. One has notably bowed thigh bones. So the group invested more in these two than in almost anyone, and they were not the strongest members of it. Whatever this was, it was not a reward for usefulness. And now the part nobody mentions, the hole itself. Sungir is loess. For a good part of the year, that ground is frozen solid. A grave deep enough for 2 children and 2-meter spears runs to something like 2 cubic meters of earth. Move that with a digging stick, an antler pick, and your hands. There is no metal on that site. There is no spade. There is a shoulder blade used as a scoop and a lot of time. So before a single bead goes in, the group has already spent days on the hole, in winter, while still needing to eat. Now think about who was not hunting during those days. Some of you are thinking this is all much simpler than I am making it. That burial is hygiene. You put the body in the ground because otherwise it draws predators and spreads illness. Fair question. And for the hole itself, that explanation works. It is probably part of the answer. But hygiene has a very specific problem. Hygiene explains a hole. It does not explain a single thing that went into it. Hygiene does not require ochre. It does not require antlers held in the arms. It does not require 10,000 beads, or a straightened tusk, or making a smaller bead size for a child. You can solve a public health problem with a shallow pit in 20 minutes. Everything past that 20 minutes is the part that needs explaining, and it is the only part I actually care about. Now the second confirmation, because so far this is archaeologists interpreting graves, and interpretation can drift. The bead experiment is one form of test, and it does real work. It converts an impression into a number. Instead of saying the beads look laborious, we can say 7,000 hours. But here is the harder test, and it comes from the other direction entirely. The question is whether deliberate placement can be distinguished from natural processes at all. So researchers run actualistic taphonomy. They put remains into real settings, caves, pits, open surfaces. Then they come back over years and record what happened. The results are consistent. Bodies left on a surface disarticulate, and they do it in a known order. The hands and feet go first. Scavengers move the long bones. Within a few seasons, the arrangement is destroyed. Bodies covered quickly stay assembled. That gives the whole field a hard criterion. Articulation plus a cut pit plus arrangement is not a story. It is a set of conditions that natural processes do not produce together. And it is why Shanidar Z counts and the flower burial does not. Now the strangest case of all. I am putting it here for one reason. I want you to see how contested this still is. In a cave system in South Africa, Lee Berger and his team recovered fossils of a small-brained hominin called Homo naledi. 15 individuals, from a chamber deep inside the system. To reach that chamber, you go through a chute about 18 centimeters wide at its narrowest point, in total darkness. Berger's team argue the bodies were carried in and placed there on purpose, possibly 250,000 years ago. If they are right, this happened before our species existed, and the brain doing it was roughly 1/3 the size of yours. The response from the field has been brutal. Reviewers say the sediments do not show the pits claimed, and that a natural trap could explain the whole accumulation. I am not going to resolve that here, and neither is anyone else this year. But notice what the fight is actually about. Nobody disputes the bones are there. The fight is over whether somebody carried them. So what ended it? Settling down ended it, and you can watch the whole thing change shape, in order, in the ground. For most of the story, a grave is a single hole, made once, where the group happened to be. Mobile people cannot maintain a cemetery. They are not coming back. Then, around 15,000 years ago in the Levant, the Natufians stopped moving. And within a few generations, you get the first real cemeteries. Not one grave, dozens in the same place, used for centuries. And one of those graves is the reason I wanted to make this video. At Ain Mallaha in northern Israel, around 12,000 years ago, an older person was laid in the ground, curled on one side. Nothing remarkable about that, except for where the left hand is. It rests on a puppy, a dog, roughly 4 or 5 months old, placed under the hand. 12,000 years ago, somebody decided this animal went in with this person, and that the hand should be on it. That is older than farming. It is older than pottery, older than writing, older than the wheel by 6,000 years. Then farming, then a permanent village, and the ground becomes property. Now the ones who stopped are more than remembered. They are a claim. They are the reason this land is ours. Then the monuments. 6,000 years ago in Western Europe, tombs of stone, built to be seen from a distance, holding many people at once. Then the gold. Varna, on the Black Sea, 6,500 years ago. One man, roughly 990 gold objects. Then the pyramids, and then everything after. And here's the bill, in numbers you can check. For almost all of human history, the body was handled by the people who knew it. Washed at home, sat with at home, carried by relatives. Now look at where the end actually happens. In the United Kingdom, only about a quarter of people finish their lives at home. Roughly half do it in a hospital, most of the rest in a care home. And once it happens, almost none of us touch anything. A professional collects the body, prepares it, returns it in a sealed container. In most Western countries, most adults have never seen a body outside a screen. Sit with that. Sungir spent 7,000 hours on it. We have arranged our entire society so that we do not have to be in the room. And the money went the same way the hours did. A funeral in the United States now runs to around $8,000. That is for a burial with a viewing. In the United Kingdom, the average sits in the low thousands of pounds. None of that is labor you perform. It is labor you purchase. Then look at the land. Cemeteries in dense countries are running out. In parts of Europe, graves are leased, not owned, terms of 20 or 30 years. Then the plot is reused. Read that again. We invented permanent ground for the ones who stopped. Then we ran out of it. So we put it on a subscription. And cremation, which barely existed in Britain a century ago, now accounts for the large majority of cases. So in about 4 generations, we went from hands to invoices. That is not a moral failing. It is a trade, and it bought real things. Fewer infections, less trauma for families, professionals who are good at a hard job. But it is still a trade, and it is worth knowing that you made it. So what if the grave was never really about the one inside it? What if a grave is a machine for the people standing around the hole? The digging takes hours, and hours is exactly what a group needs to absorb something it cannot absorb quickly. The objects are not for the one who stopped. They are proof, to everyone watching, that this person counted. And what if that is why it appears exactly when it does? Not when brains got big, when groups got tight. Look at what that reframes. Every other animal has the feeling. None of them have the whole. Because the whole is not an expression of feeling. It is a piece of social technology. And it does a job that nothing else does. We traded 7,000 hours of our own hands for a sealed container and a professional, and most of us never even knew it was gone. So go back to that ground near where you are sitting. It is still there. Nobody farms it, nobody builds on it. And now you know what it is. The single most consistent and most expensive thing our species has ever done. We have been doing it since before we were entirely us. Now I want to hear from you. 2 questions, and the second one is the real one. First, do you think Homo naledi carried those bodies down the chute, or did the cave do it? Pick a side. And second, have you ever actually been in a room with a body? Not a screen, a room. I suspect the answer splits this comment section almost exactly in half, and I suspect it splits by age.